Right. Hello everybody. So this is just a summary of today's lesson. It is the 13th of September, and the first thing we did is we took some notes. So I'll go through this kind of quickly, but if you want to pause the video, you can always pause the video. But we talked about a couple of things. First of all, whenever you make a graph, it really breaks the graph into 4 parts. So we call those quadrants, the 4 parts of the graph. We've got the first quadrant, and we use Roman numerals. Second quadrant, Roman numerals. Third quadrant, and the fourth quadrant. We notice that in each quadrant, for instance, quadrant 1, x and y values are going to be positive. For instance, if I graph 5, 2, positive 5, positive 2, it puts me in quadrant number 1. Quadrant 2, we notice, has a negative x and a positive y. So anything graphed like negative 3, 7, back 3, up 7 would be in quadrant 3. Anything in quadrant 3 would be a negative and a negative. So you would go back and down. For instance, negative 2, negative 3 would be graphed in quadrant 3. And finally, quadrant 4 has a positive x and a negative y. Anything graphed in this quadrant have to have positive 2, negative 1, over 2, down 1 is in quadrant 4. The very middle of the graph is called the origin, and the origin is at the point 0, 0. Again, this is just a summary. If you want to pause it and write these things down, please do. We also talked about linear graphs. The word linear always means straight. If you see the word linear, it's a straight line. We looked at an example of graphing negative 1/2 x plus 5. We start at 5 as my y-intercept, the slope is down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2, so we graph this line here, and that is a linear line, okay? We talked about quadratic graphs. Quadratic graphs look like this. They're called parabolas, but we'll get more into that later. But any x squared equation is a parabola. It has this shape. We squared some numbers, 0 squared, 1 squared, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, negative 1 squared is positive 1, negative 2 squared is positive 4, negative 3 squared is positive 9, and we were able to connect the dots. Exponential growth, this is an exponential graph, and if we start with 1 and we double it, 1 doubled becomes 2, 2 doubled becomes 4, 4 doubled becomes 8, 8 doubles becomes 16, and you get a graph that looks like this. 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16. And this is an exponential growth. We also talked about the fact that if the x is in the exponent, it's exponential. Easy way to remember that. X is in the exponent, it's exponential. Okay? In addition, we talked about 2 different types of graphs. One's a continuous graph. You notice it just continues, has arrows, there's no gaps, it's nice and flowy. That's a continuous graph. Or a discrete graph, which is just points. Now, why do we need this? Well, we said this could be time, whether it's 1 second, half a second, 1/10 of a second, 0.0 seconds, 5.8 seconds. Time is continuous, but discrete. Example, I have 1 dog, now I have 2 dogs, now I have 3 dogs, I have 4 dogs, but I can't have half a dog, I can't have a third of a dog, I can't have 2.5 dogs, so a discrete graph is just dot to dot to dot to dot. Then finally ask the kids about a function. So we all know, hopefully, that a function is where every x is paired to only one y. We talked about the vertical line test. If you can draw a vertical line down and it never hits the graph twice, it is a function. But if you draw a vertical line anywhere on the graph and it hits it in more than one place, it is not a function. This x value here has 2 y values. That's not okay. All right? We also did an activity with cutouts. So we went to, I think it was pages 23, 25, and 27 out of our book. And we cut all of these graphs out. And then we sorted them. This is Cordy's paper. And she sorted these graphs by the ones that will go together. And then what she did is she gave her groups a name. She called these linear straight lines discrete because they have the dots, exponential because they curve up or curve down, quadratics, and finally these are the non-functions. Okay, we did that. We also can talk about what the book talks about, and in the book, after we did the cutouts, we looked at identifying these graphs. We identified that these were all discrete graphs. We identified that all of these graphs have a line of symmetry, a vertical line of symmetry, vertical line of symmetry. We talked about these graphs, how these graphs are grouped together because they are not functions. These are not functions. And then we looked at the homework, and the homework is page 29 and 30. And that's all I have to summarize this. If you have questions, please come and see me.